Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Image and Wire Show. My name is Jake Fishman. I'm the host of the show and the editor of the Image and Wire newsletter. And I am really happy to have Dr. Sonia Gupta from Change Healthcare with us today. Dr. Gupta is the Chief Medical Officer at Change Healthcare, and she has a deep history both on the radiology as a practicing radiologist and then also on the vendor side of our industry. And she has some really, really cool insights into where both of those areas are going and how they're converging. And I can't wait to share that with you. So Dr. Gupta, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jake. I'm excited to be here.
It's really good to have you. It's really good to have you here. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk a lot about AI today. And, I've been talking a lot about AI for 4 years, ever since I started this. With that, all that talk about AI, where are we in the actual path towards AI adoption?
I think we're at a really exciting juncture of that AI path. As you mentioned, we have been talking about AI for several years, kind of setting the stage for where we're at right now. Right now, about a third of radiologists are actually using AI in some capacity. And for the 2/3 that are not, they're on the way to using it. So they're starting to think about how to implement AI into their daily practice in some capacity. So I usually encourage people to think about AI into, two broad categories: AI for image interpretation and then AI for workflow. And I think that really helps figure out how you might use AI, for those radiologists who are thinking about incorporating it. So right now, a lot of large radiology practices and hospitals, they're already using AI for a variety of use cases for image interpretation. Some really exciting stuff, identifying acute stroke, acute intracranial hemorrhage, pulmonary embolism, fractures, or lung nodule detection. And there's also a lot of practices that are starting to explore to use AI in workflow. And, what does that mean for workflow? All the stuff that is not image interpretation and all the other things that are involved with our workflow. So for example, incidental finding follow-up, we see something concerning on a patient and using AI to just make sure that that finding does get the follow-up care that it needs, whether it's a repeat scan or maybe an appointment with a specialist. There are applications of AI for workflow related to assistance with radiology reporting and making sure that the right consensus and follow-up guidelines are included in a radiology report. And then also improvement of image quality when patients are getting, for example, an MRI scan or a PET scan, AI that makes sure that those images are high quality and actually helps them decrease their time in the scanner, which is of particular excitement if you can cut down, a 60-minute scan to 20 minutes.
So for the 2/3 of providers who are making their way into becoming AI users, or other folks who are earlier adopters but still have room to fill out their portfolio, how do they differentiate the good tools within each of those categories that you talked about and the ones that, might not be good?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to think about it. What problem are you trying to solve in your practice? I would say that's the first question. It's a lot more important to have an AI strategy that is intentional for your group, not kind of getting AI for the sake of getting AI. And I think sometimes that's what leads to an outcome that is, less than desired. And then, some folks are doing AI pilots. And I think that we focus a lot on the pilots that go well. Of course, naturally, we're all talking about our successes. And you won't hear a lot of people doing webinars about an AI pilot that didn't go the way they hoped. And I think that is really important, asking your colleagues, well, what AI companies did you consider? And then, if there was one that you tried and then you didn't decide to continue the pilot, why was that? And then also, it's okay if it's neutral. It's all right if you use an AI product and it's not good or bad. It doesn't really change anything for your practice. That is the experience that some groups have. And then, it's okay to have that experience and to then rethink your strategy, about, again, what problems you're trying to solve at your practice. Because some folks may need image interpretation because maybe they don't have a lot of subspecialized radiologists. Maybe they need help in neuroradiology, for example. Or maybe they have every subspecialty radiologist, but they really have so many different sites and practices and geographic areas to cover that they really need help with the workflow. So I think it really is about what problems you're trying to solve more so than AI really being good or bad. But, one practical thing we can say is if you're using a tool that gives you a lot of false positives, then you'll lose trust in the tool and then you'll probably turn it off and stop using it. So, to answer that more specifically, that would be an example of a pilot that doesn't go well for image interpretation, for example.
I guess for these folks who are deciding what to evaluate, where does FDA clearance come into play, or how does it come into play?
That's a great question. I think, FDA clearance is really the baseline right now. If you're going to be considering a product, it should probably already have FDA clearance. And I think, you need to do your own diligence just to check if the vendor is selling 5 products, for example, make sure that they actually have FDA clearance for all 5, because sometimes the way it's marketed might be that they have clearance for 2 of the products and 3 are in progress. And before using those 3, you need to just check on that. But I would say that that's just the baseline. And it doesn't set the stage for whether or not the product will be good or bad. Again, to get FDA clearance, you need to show that the algorithm has a certain degree of accuracy on a certain patient population. And I think we talk about this a lot. Just because it works for FDA clearance and works in this specific patient population doesn't mean that it'll work when you deploy it at your practice, because there could be differences in geography, age, all sorts of demographics, male versus female, any different flavor of patient demographics could be different in your practice versus in the sample subset that was used to obtain FDA clearance. So that might be why when you actually deploy the algorithm at your practice that you don't get the same degree of accuracy. So that FDA clearance is more just a gatekeeper, okay, yes, it's okay to try to use this. And then also just be aware that not every AI company that's out there needs an FDA clearance. A lot of the AI that's focused on workflow doesn't make any diagnostic decisions, so there's no FDA clearance needed. And that's an important differentiator too, to just ask any partners that you're considering.
And you brought up an important point about kind of doing your own evaluations for the folks who are kind of past that stage of selecting what AI tools to evaluate. How should they structure their evaluations?
How should they structure their evaluations for using an AI tool is also a great question that depends on the problem they're trying to solve. So, if it's image interpretation, then you'll need to analyze if, for example, let's say you're trying to detect pulmonary embolism, just very specific use case. If when using the algorithm, the accuracy of detection of those pulmonary emboli goes up versus what the detection rate was before. And it's definitely easier said than done. I make it really easy when I say it that way, but it involves a lot of work on the back end, collecting those cases, having a radiologist review them, making sure that the cases match up with what the radiologist thinks. It's pretty time consuming. And I think that can be a challenge for a smaller practice that's considering implementing AI. But that's where your partner comes in. So your AI partner company can help you figure that out. And the two of you can work together to determine the metrics of what you consider successful. And you can even ask for their assistance. Can you help me separate out the cases where you guys detected a PE? And then, we're going to work on trying to have some of our radiologists, let's say there's 100 cases and we have 10 radiologists, maybe each of them will just take, they'll review those 10 cases and make sure we're on point. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. But for some of the smaller practices, I think you might want to ask your AI vendor partner to do more of the legwork and really, truly partner with you to kind of track those analytics.
That seems pretty fair. What are the other questions or requests that they should have for their AI vendors?
I think, it's important to set expectations for how long an implementation could take. And what does your practice need to provide them from your IT support? Because, as we know, our IT staff is overwhelmed with requests because a lot of times it's not just radiology, it's the whole hospital. So, cardiology, surgery, everybody needs IT. And, the EMR needs IT support. So kind of figuring out, well, what are the expectations from the AI vendor? How much IT support are we supposed to be giving them? And then how much are they going to give us? So that's a really important thing to kind of set expectations as well for, does the implementation take 3 months? Are we going to go live in 3 months and say that we're using AI for our patients? Or is this going to be something that takes 6 months or a year? Is it going to work with your PAC system? Is it going to crash your system? All sorts of like basic questions, problems that we didn't even think about, can come up. And asking your vendor for their experiences. After you've signed a contract to partner with them, I think they should be more open about sharing what went wrong. Do you have some partners where things went wrong? What can we do better? What can we make sure we address at the front end of the deal rather than, at the end and surprises us later?
You brought up an interesting point on the IT side, because of course this plays a huge role. And then there's this other macro trend that's happening kind of parallel to AI, which is the cloud adoption across healthcare providers and practices and everyone else. What should these providers who are adopting AI, maybe have already moved to the cloud, or maybe the other way around, what should they know about transitioning AI to the cloud?
Yeah, there's different ways to approach it. And I think really it comes down to where your patient data is going. And that's the important thing. Is the data for your patients going to stay on the hospital premises? Is it going to go into the cloud? Who's going to own that information about your patients? Or are you trying to use AI in a marketplace type of setting, or is it in your PACS? There's so many different variations of that. And, even cloud adoption. Do you have a large tech company that is running the cloud that your hospital system is using? Some of these decisions may have already been made by your hospital system or your practice. So I think then, placing that into the setting of transitioning with your AI vendor and asking them, well, where are you going to keep the data? Can you work with our cloud technology? Do we need new cloud technology? Or in the last case, can we just keep it on the premises of the hospital, on our local servers, because we don't want it going anywhere?
Those are also fair questions. So from a Change Healthcare perspective, so I know you're, I guess, playing in the space and or supporting this area in multiple ways. How is Change specifically helping support their customers' transition to AI?
Well, we have partnerships with several AI companies that use AI for various tasks. And these can be integrated into the PACS workflow. We also have some of our own in-house AI development. We have an AI product that's workflow focused, and it actually helps you pull up prior exams based on the body region that was scanned. So, we cover workflow and we cover image interpretation.
We've covered the whole life cycle of AI adoption for a provider up until now. But still, there's a lot to take in there, right? Especially if somebody's just a complete AI newcomer. Yeah. Based on what we've talked about so far, what are some of the key takeaways that they should keep in mind to navigate their own AI adoption?
Yeah, I think we've made it sound really easy and smooth, but there's a lot of nuances to it for sure. I think, again, I always encourage everyone to just take a step back and to really identify the issues you want to solve in your practice. Because again, every practice has different challenges, again, whether they're related to image interpretation, the number of specialists, or workflow related challenges, just because you're in a really high volume practice. And, ensuring that right from the get-go, you're trying to solve a problem and you're looking for AI vendors that actually solve that problem. And you're just not getting AI for the sake of getting AI because it sounds exciting. Having that clear problem solving vision in mind really sets the stage, I think, for success. And then, once you've identified the problems you want to solve, I think then the next step is to find resources to support your AI journey. And this is where I think radiology really shines. Our professional societies all have excellent forums to guide practices through these steps. whether it's research, comparing vendors, figuring out which ones have FDA clearance, and most importantly, interacting with your colleagues, colleagues from residency or fellowship, or those working at other practices who are using AI, that's also a great way to get practical recommendations from those who already have hands-on experience. And, if you don't have those colleagues available to you, then I think our professional societies are really able to fill that gap because they're all addressing AI in some capacity now, whether it's with webinars like this, discussions, teaching cases, or papers that have been published on AI, if you're approaching it from a research academic standpoint, all of those resources are definitely there. And I think the important thing to remember is that we're all learning together. This is a new journey for everyone. Like you said, we've been talking about AI for years, and now we're at the most exciting point. We're starting to use it. And, for better or for worse, we're there. We're doing it, and we're all doing it together, and we're all learning from each other. So you can't really be too hard on yourself if you feel that you don't have this detailed AI strategy yet because it's all new.
I feel like we just created one more resource for all these people who are looking to make the transition. So thank you so much, Dr. Gupta. This was incredibly insightful for me. And I think this is one of those Imaging Wire Show episodes where you can truly rewatch it a couple times and learn something new, and really help people as they move onto their AI journey and their cloud journey, for that matter. So thank you, and thanks for joining me, and to the audience who's out there, thanks for joining us too. The stuff that Dr. Gupta just shared, this seems like a really solid roadmap for AI adoption. If you're on that path, the things that she's doing at Change and things that Change Healthcare is doing is really set up to help you with that path. So what I would suggest is reach out to, maybe not necessarily reach out to Dr. Gupta, she's probably busy, but reach out to her, her colleagues, and talk to Change about how they can help you. And thank you very much, and have a great day, everyone.